Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Court Time with Crina Mustafa. I'm Crina Mustafa, and today I'm joined by a very special guest, Subria Whitaker of Grow the Game. Subria, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited that you're here. I'm so glad we finally got to do this. I've been wanting you to come on the show for a while. You're probably like one of the biggest people I know, like in women's hoops right now, and just like you do such a good job of growing the game, and that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. Pun intended. I'm going to make a lot of those puns today, but you are like the founder of Grow the Game. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that and how that came to be?
Sure. So Grow the Game is an initiative that I started 2 seasons ago, and our mission is to increase awareness, engagement, involvement, and attendance at women's sports. And it really just started by chance. I had been, a WNBA fan since I was in the 8th grade, and that had become something that a lot of people knew me for, especially, with the Sky and just being an avid Sky fan. So I just wanted to invite people on that journey with me who were always responding to Instagram stories, interested in the game and wanting to attend. And I'm just like, every time I post something, everyone's always talking about how it looks so fun, how they want to go to a game. And I just really didn't understand what was stopping them. And so apparently it was simply an invitation, right? Accessibility is a huge part of women's sports. And so just offering people an opportunity to say, hey, we're going to go to this game as a group. I would love for you all to be there. And just people who knew me, who didn't necessarily know each other, but we were able to get over 40 people in attendance at one game. And people just sent me the money. And I said, well, if people trust me enough to just send me their money, and there are all these sporting events out there who have tickets available through their trusted sites, then obviously there's something there if people are willing to, trust me, trust my judgment, and trust me to set up this group game. So I decided to just keep it going, made a logo, made a website, and Grow the Game was born.
I love that. And then what are like in this journey, like what are some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered while trying to grow the audience for women's basketball?
Um, Honestly, you would think it may be like the trolls. I'm sure you deal with them a lot on Twitter and in social media. But
Yeah.
honestly, it's the people who are unfortunately part of the organizations, who are part of, some of the women's leagues, some of the teams in the front office, some of the people, at these media, organizations who have the power to be gatekeepers in the space, or who have decision making power, who just simply refuse to make the right decision, who refuse to support the right people, create the right partnerships. And sometimes it's just really disheartening when you're trying to do something good and you're like, well, wait, doesn't this benefit you too? And just realizing that no, everyone is not there to do the same work as you to benefit, these initiatives, these players, these teams like you are, even though they're, in the space.
Yeah. And I guess building on that, like what are some of the biggest lessons you've learned from dealing with stuff like that?
The biggest lesson I've learned is that it's bigger than you. There were a lot of times when I'm a very principled person. And so there were a lot of times when I didn't want to work with certain people or didn't want to work with certain organizations anymore just because of the way that they treated me or just the experiences and encounters that I had with them. And I had to remind myself that it's bigger than me, it's bigger than them, it's bigger than these, you know, one off or I guess unique situations. And I just have to keep doing the work because I started it for the players. I started it for the next generation of fans, the next generation of players, the alumni who haven't gotten the opportunities or the flowers that they deserve. And so I have to just remember that it's about them and that it's way more than just my feelings or how I feel about something. So that is what really keeps me going and keeps things in perspective.
Yeah, I really relate to that because I'm still very new in the women's basketball space. I think it's gonna be my 3rd year going into covering the WNBA. So I'm like also kind of seeing a bit of that at times and the kind of learning like, okay, let me just step back for a moment and remember why I'm here in the first place and like what I actually want to do. And what I actually want to do is just tell the stories of these athletes because that's what matters to me. So I like that you said that because I think a lot of people in this space can resonate with that. And so let's talk about the W for a bit. You mentioned that you've been a fan since grade 8. Honestly, like I want to know like what was that like? Because at least like for me living in Canada and like growing up in Canada, I had barely any idea about the WNBA and I only like came into it in like recent years. So like how did you get into it and what was that experience like?
Honestly, I don't even remember the first time I discovered it. It certainly wasn't from my parents or from anyone older than me who already knew about it. I want to say, and I mean, I could be completely wrong or mistaken in what I'm about to say, but I want to say that the games used to come on certain channels outside of like ESPN, ABC, CBS, like the local sports channels. And I
Mhm.
want to say it maybe was something like Lifetime or like Lifetime adjacent or like V8, like something like that, Lifetime VH1, something like that, that was not considered a sports channel at that time. So in 2008 is when I was in 8th grade. So this is like 2007, 2008. And I was just flipping channels. I love a good Lifetime movie, right? Like, loved those channels at that age. And I was like, are these women playing basketball? And and I'm an only child. So, like, I'm just in the room looking around, like, my parents are not there, staring to the camera that isn't there. And I'm like, you mean to tell me that I've been kind of like obsessing over the NBA and there's a WNBA this entire time? So that's honestly how I stumbled upon it. And I just identified heavily with Candace Dupree, who was our franchise player at the time. And I was just so taken aback. I'm like, there's a whole WNBA team in Chicago. And at that age, obviously, I don't have a car, like, I don't have a license. I can't just go to the game. And at the time they were in a really far arena in like Rosemont, Illinois, and they weren't in Wintrust, which is like a 20-minute drive from me. And I'm like, Mom, can you buy me a ticket to go to this WNBA game and drive me all the way there? And I don't know about like your generation, but like back in my generation, parents were like, absolutely, if it was far, they were like, no. Or like, I'll take you there, but you got to find a way back. Not possible for where that arena was. So I just kind of just watched the games on TV, engaged with the community on Twitter and Facebook, and just kind of kept in the loop that way, kind of talking to players and them just being really accessible, putting a great product on the floor, even though it wasn't, something that I could get to and experience live as much as I wanted to. It was still a great community to be in. It was a really fun experience just coming up in that era of, W fandom and W Twitter. And it's just really stuck with me ever since. So now I make sure that, kids like me who want to go can get to the game and try and make it more accessible so they don't have to just watch from it, far at home like I did.
Yeah, I remember like the Lifetime stuff from when you went on They've Got Now to talk about like how you got into the W. And like my experience is like kind of similar in the sense like my first memory of being aware of what the WNBA was I used to watch this show on the Disney Channel called Ricky, Nikki, Dickie, and Dawn. And Candace Parker was in an episode like as herself. And they like branded her as this like WNBA star. And I was like, oh, and this was in like 2009. So she was like literally had just like entered the league. So that was like kind of like my first like, oh, there are like women's professional basketball players. And then I kind of got into it more like around the bubble season. That's really when I got way more aware of it. But yeah, it's kind of like wild to think about just how much like it's grown in popularity in the last like several years. And it feels like building on that because of its growth and popularity. I feel like some of the critical issues are being like thrust into the spotlight. Like there's all these conversations about like where like how should the W grow, like what should they be doing, what should they be prioritizing. And this like poll by Ari Chambers, like it sparked a lot of debate where she tweeted that now that we're here talking about it, what do you think should be the priority for the WNBA? And she listed charter flights, expansion, soft cap, marketing, and storytelling. And that kind of like provoked a lot of conversation. So I'm kind of curious, like your thoughts on that and what you think for that conversation.
Yeah, so I think marketing and storytelling is a huge part. And it's interesting, and you're right, that sparked a lot of conversations because there was another conversation happening last night that I ended up doing like a 5 tweet thread about when someone asked about what is the difference between, I guess, the attention that college women's basketball gets versus the WNBA. And a lot of people were saying the marketing, the fan loyalty. And so marketing is a huge, huge part of it. Just because I remember when the All-Star game was here, and I remember being on, anyone who knows Chicago, I know people say that like Chicago and Toronto are like cousin cities. So I'm not sure like how uh it is over there, but like Chicago is like very segregated, right? And it's segregated based on a lot of race, ethnicity, and socioeconomic status. And I live on the South Side, which is predominantly Black, predominantly low to middle income. And I would be up north downtown and see a lot of signage for the All-Star game, but it didn't really translate the same where I'm from on the South Side,
Mm-hmm.
which didn't really match when you think about the player statistics and between 80-86% of the league being women of color, and so not marketing to the people who can easily identify with the players. Having Candace Parker as an all-star and not having her picture anywhere, or I think we had like 4, like between Coach Wade and 3 players at least in the all-star game, none of their pictures
Mm-hmm.
were included in any of the signage. So even people who knew them from being in the sky did not know that they were going to be at the all-star game, and maybe that being a reason of why they should be interested, why they should attend. Or even just a picture of anybody. It was just the logo, like just the All-Star logo, not even the WNBA logo, just the All-Star logo. And I'm like, I know what that means because I've seen the logo because I'm already following you on social media.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a miss when you're trying to attract fans or potential fans who aren't as knowledgeable, and they're seeing these signage everywhere and they have no clue what it means. Like
Yeah.
no picture, like nothing to grasp and kind of like make an assumption to then make a decision on if they're interested or not. And so just little things like that, very, very important and needs to be improved, especially when it comes to being intentional in the positioning of marketing. But I think both the marketing and the storytelling are just maybe just a symptom or related to the real issue, which I believe is accessibility, right? Because accessibility is knowing the information and knowing that it's there. And so just like the example I just used about the marketing, yes, the marketing is a piece of it, but it was there. It was a matter of whether or not someone who could see the marketing. So it doesn't matter how visible it is. It's visible. You have it. I see it, but I don't know what it means. And so
Mm-hmm.
the information that you're trying to convey is not getting to me. And so I'm not making the sale to get the ticket to go to All Star. I don't know what it means, so I'm not watching the game. So we're missing out on a lot of money and a lot of support and just numbers, with not making things as accessible. So if we're gonna focus our attention on the marketing and the storytelling, I think we should start with accessibility at the forefront of all of it. But I do think that that is where we should start before we start talking about expansion and charter flights and anything else. It's using marketing and storytelling to make things more visible and more accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. Because before you can expand, you have to make sure you have a solid base. So I really like everything that you said. And it made me also think like the signage part of it made me think of on the tennis side, like we like in Toronto, we have a tennis tournament here every August. And I remember growing up, like I would see signage like all over the city of like Serena Williams or like Roger Federer. And I feel like without those, like I remember that so vividly. And I feel like if I hadn't seen those, then maybe I would not have even known like the event was happening. Like there's so many different avenues that you can use to market that to the people that are already there in your city and like the people who need to like know like okay what is happening, who are these players. That's like also one of the biggest things, like people that I know that try to get into the W, they're like I don't know who these players are. And I feel like that's also one of the biggest things, and like something that I try to do at least is like tell these player stories because people are attracted to like the personalities, the characters, like who they are as people, and that's how you get into the sport as well. So yeah, all of that is very very important. And you guys should just take a second, just listen to Sabria's answer and just let that sink in because I think that that was really well said. And then kind of my last question that you kind of already touched on a bit, but what is your biggest advice on growing the game, whether that's like from a media perspective or from these organizations?
Whew. I think
I know it's loaded. It's a loaded
for
question.
the organizations, yeah, no, this could be, I could give you a 30-minute answer. But from really the core for everybody, whether it's media, whether it's organizations, whether it's just a fan, just do what you can. Like everyone doesn't have to start an organization or an initiative called Grow the Game to grow the game. You can just do your part, whether it's tweeting about it, whether it's holding spaces about it, making TikToks about it, which a lot of W Twitter has already done and kind of shown their support that way. Whether it's inviting someone to go with you, telling the organizations that you're a part of, hey, we should have a group night at this game. It's just meeting them, where you can go, doing whatever you can, putting forth whatever energy you're able to. But for like the organizations and the media, it's just really showing your support with actual effort. Like we say a lot of things. We're in an era of diversity and inclusion and numbers, but the numbers are rarely ever supported by action. It's being really intentional about equity. And so when media organizations want to talk about, covering the W, it doesn't really matter, or your promise or your commitment doesn't really matter when you're paying, other people full-time salaries and giving them all the resources in the world to provide full-time coverage of the men's sports in the area, but the people you have covering for your women's sports are project-based, episode-based, or freelance, but you expect the same results and you expect the same coverage, and you're not starting everyone on an equal playing field. When you tweet or promote about, your March Madness bracket in the office or the company, but you're only doing men's and you don't even specify men's March Madness. It's just March Madness and it's only men, and you can't even replicate the same things you're giving to men's sports or men's athletes to women's sports and women's athletes. So don't just say it and make it sound good. Actually do something and do good. And the same thing with, the teams. You want to increase sales, actually do something to increase ticket sales. You want to improve fan engagement and the fan experience, but you have the power to do so. So do something, right? Think outside the box, be more intentional. And if you don't know something because maybe you're at the organization and you're using it as a stepping stone, it happens, that's the life of professional sports. But if you're not going to actually put forth the effort, hire people who can, consult with people who can, partner with organizations who can. Like it's okay to not have the expertise or, the willingness to do something, but don't block other people from getting involved who do have the expertise, who do have the willingness and want to do it. Just let them. Like, don't stand in the way. You don't have to be negative. You don't have to take away from the movement or the organizations, but you should be making sure that people are in a position to where they can contribute if you're not going to.
Yeah, I fully agree. And just saying the Toronto game is sold out, completely sold out. Just saying, y'all. So hopefully, I don't know. I'll ask you after the show if you're gonna make your way up north here in May. But thank you. Oh, I don't. That doesn't
I
seem right.
planned on it. I had planned on it, but you were right. The tickets sold out so fast. I never got a chance to get one, but I might still pop up and be in the area, but I do not have a ticket. So I am sad about that.
I do have 2 tickets just in case the credential doesn't go through. So maybe we'll talk.
Okay. If the credential goes, yes, if it goes through, just let me know. And Siobhan and I will be there.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Subria, for joining me today. Last thing, just tell people where they can find you and anything you have coming up.
Sure, you can find me at Subria Whitaker on Twitter, on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Grow the Game on all socials as well at Grow the Game W. So just did a very, very great session on branding for athletes and everything NIL at Illinois State. So looking to announce some similar events at universities in the future, and we are launching Grow the Game University either today, tomorrow, or the next day, just really soon, just to add more of an educational element. So like always looking to partner with organizations or people who are committed to growing the game. And so just making myself available and accessible there. I look forward to hearing from anyone who might be interested in learning more, working more, talking more about these things. And so, yeah, love if you all would follow and connect with me on social media or Grow the Game. And so we can keep you, aware of everything we have going on with the upcoming season.
I love it. Love it. Thank you so much again for joining me. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another episode of Court Time. And we'll see you next week.